The stagecoach rolled into Moab, Utah territory on a scorching afternoon in June of 1882, carrying a woman who wore her lies like armor and a carpet bag that held everything she claimed to own. Olivia Hartwell stepped down onto the dusty main street with practiced grace, her dove gray traveling dress somehow still crisp despite the brutal journey through Red Rock country, and she looked at the ramshackle buildings with eyes that had learned to see possibility instead of truth. She was 22 years old, though the shadows behind her smile made her seem older, and when the station manager asked where her husband might be, she said he was waiting for her at the ranch just outside town, that he'd sent for her from Boston after striking it rich in cattle. The lie came easily because she'd rehearsed it 100 times during the long journey west, perfecting every detail until even she could almost believe it. The station manager tipped his hat and offered to help her find transportation, but Olivia assured him she could manage, that her husband had made arrangements. She stood in the shade of the station overhang, watching the coach pull away in a cloud of red dust, and felt the first flutter of panic in her chest. She had $17 to her name, no husband waiting anywhere, and no plan beyond getting as far from Philadelphia as money and desperation could carry her. The bruises on her ribs had faded to yellow during the journey, but the memory of her brother-in-law's fists remained vivid, as did the cold satisfaction in her sister's eyes when she'd called Olivia a liar and a thief and thrown her into the street. "You look lost, madam." The voice came from behind her, low and careful, the kind of voice that didn't want to startle. Olivia turned and found herself looking at a man who seemed carved from the same red rock that surrounded the town. He was tall and lean, maybe 25 or 26, with sun-darkened skin and eyes the color of creek water. He wore dusty work clothes and a hat with a wide brim, and he held himself with the easy confidence of someone who knew exactly who he was and never questioned it. A cowboy, clearly, probably just come in from one of the ranches that dotted the valley. "Not lost," Olivia said, lifting her chin. "Just waiting." For the husband from Boston who struck it rich in cattle? The man's expression didn't change, but something in his voice told her he'd been standing close enough to hear her conversation with the station manager. "Because I know every rancher within 50 miles of Moab, and not one of them sent for a wife from back east." Olivia's heart hammered against her corset, but she kept her face smooth. "Perhaps you don't know everything you think you know. Perhaps." He studied her for a long moment, and Olivia had the unsettling feeling he could see straight through her carefully constructed story to the desperate, frightened woman beneath. "Or perhaps you need a place to stay and a way to earn your keep, and you're too proud to admit you came west with nothing but hope and a handful of dollars." The accuracy of his assessment stole her breath. For a moment she considered maintaining the fiction, but something in his steady gaze made her too tired to lie. "What if I am? Then I'd say you're in luck." He gestured down the street toward a building with a hand-painted sign that read Colorado River Hotel in fading letters. "Mrs. Chen, who runs the hotel, has been looking for help since her daughter got married and moved to Salt Lake City. Room and board plus a small wage. Honest work if you're interested." "Why would you help me?" Olivia asked, suspicious of kindness after so many months of cruelty. "Because you look like you needed it." He touched the brim of his hat. "Name's Warren Garrett. I run cattle on a spread about 10 miles northeast of town. Come into Moab every week or so for supplies and to check on things." "Things? My grandmother lives here. She's getting on in years and likes to pretend she doesn't need anyone looking after her. But I worry." He said it simply, without embarrassment, and Olivia felt something shift in her chest. A man who cared for his grandmother, who saw through her lies but offered help anyway. It seemed too good to be true, which meant it probably was. "Olivia Hartwell," she said finally, because he'd given her his name, and it seemed churlish not to return the courtesy. "And I appreciate the suggestion about the hotel." Warren nodded and turned to go, then paused. "The story about the husband from Boston was pretty good. You almost had me convinced for a second." "Almost?" "Your eyes gave you away. They're too wary. A woman going to meet her husband looks excited or nervous or both. You looked like you were running from something. He said it matter-of-factly, without judgment, and then he walked away before she could formulate a response. Olivia stood in the shade and watched him disappear into the general store across the street. Her hands were shaking, so she gripped the handle of her carpetbag tighter and forced herself to breathe slowly. He'd seen through her in less than 5 minutes, which meant her careful fiction was more fragile than she'd hoped. But he'd also offered help instead of exposing her, which meant maybe, just maybe, this town could be different from the one she'd fled. She picked up her bag and walked toward the Colorado River Hotel. Mrs. Chin turned out to be a formidable woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and no-nonsense manner. She looked Olivia up and down when she came in asking about work, then asked exactly 3 questions. Could she cook? Could she clean? Could she keep her mouth shut about other people's business? When Olivia answered yes to all 3, Mrs. Chin nodded and showed her to a small room on the second floor with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a window that looked out over the red rock cliffs that gave the valley its dramatic beauty. You start tomorrow morning, Mrs. Chin said. 5 o'clock. Breakfast service begins at 6. You'll help with cooking, serving, and cleaning. Afternoon, you'll clean the guest rooms. Evening, you'll help with supper service. You get Sunday afternoons off, and 1 full day a month if you give me notice. Room and board and $12 a month. You steal from me or my guests. I'll have the marshal on you before you can blink. Understood? Yes, madam, Olivia said, relief making her voice thick. $12 a month wasn't much, but it was steady. And steady was something she hadn't had in so long she'd almost forgotten what it felt like. Mrs. Chen's expression softened slightly. You running from the law? No, madam. Running from a man? Olivia hesitated, then nodded. Then you'll fit right in here. Mrs. Chen moved toward the door, then paused. Half the women in Moab came west to escape something. The difference between surviving and thriving is whether you spend your time looking backward or forward. Choose forward, Miss Hartwell, and you'll do just fine. That first night in Moab, Olivia lay in her narrow bed and listened to the unfamiliar sounds of the desert night. Wind whispered through the cottonwoods along the creek, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote called out to the stars. She thought about Warren Garrett and his calm assessment of her situation, about the way he'd offered help without asking for anything in return. She thought about Mrs. Chen's advice to choose forward instead of backward, and she wondered if it was really possible to outrun the past or if it would always catch up eventually. She fell asleep with her hand curled around the handle of her carpetbag, ready to run if morning brought trouble instead of a fresh start. Morning brought flour dust and bacon grease and the rhythmic work of feeding hungry men who came in from the surrounding ranches and mines. Olivia learned quickly that Mrs. Chen ran her kitchen with military precision and expected the same from anyone who worked for her. By noon, Olivia's feet ached and her back hurt, but she felt more settled than she had in months. There was something deeply satisfying about work that produced tangible results, about watching people enjoy food she'd helped prepare, about earning her place instead of depending on charity or enduring abuse for the crime of being a burden. Warren Garrett came in for lunch on the 3rd day, and when he saw Olivia carrying plates to a table of miners, he gave her a small nod of approval. Later, when the lunch rush had ended and she was wiping down tables, he approached with his hat in his hands. Looks like you're settling in, he said. Thanks to you. Olivia wrung out her cloth and met his eyes. I never properly thanked you for pointing me toward Mrs. Chen. You probably saved my life. I doubt it was that dramatic. But he looked pleased. You hungry? I was going to grab something at the cafe down the street, and I thought you might like company. If you're allowed a break, that is. Olivia glanced toward the kitchen, where Mrs. Chen was rolling out pie dough with fierce concentration. Mrs. Chen? Go on, the older woman called without looking up. You've earned a break. Be back by 3 for the room cleaning. The cafe turned out to be a small establishment run by a Mexican family, and the food was better than anything Olivia had eaten in months. She and Warren sat at a corner table, and for the first few minutes they ate in companionable silence. Then Warren set down his fork and looked at her with those steady, creek water eyes. You don't have to tell me anything you don't want to, he said, but I get the feeling you're carrying around a story that's too heavy to hold alone. Olivia's first instinct was to deflect, to spin another fiction about the husband from Boston, or invent a tragic widowhood. But something about Warren's quiet patience made her want to tell the truth, or at least a version of it. So she set down her own fork and began to speak. My parents died of cholera when I was 16, she said. I went to live with my older sister and her husband in Philadelphia. For the first year, things were fine. Then my sister got sick, something with her lungs that left her weak and bitter. Her husband, he started looking at me differently, started finding excuses to touch me, to corner me when my sister wasn't around. She paused, swallowing hard against the memory. I told my sister, and she called me a liar, said I was trying to steal her husband, that I was jealous of what she had. 3 months ago, her husband came into my room drunk and angry. I fought him off and ran. Got all the way to the street before my sister caught me, accused me of theft, of being a whore trying to ruin her marriage. Her husband came down and backed up her story, and before I knew it, I was the villain in my own life. Warren's jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. I had a little money I'd saved from sewing work, Olivia continued. I bought a ticket west because west was as far from Philadelphia as I could get. The husband from Boston seemed like a good story, something that would explain why a single woman was traveling alone and give me a kind of protection. I didn't think anyone would see through it so quickly. I'm sorry, Warren said quietly, for what happened to you, for what your family did. Are you? Olivia heard the bitterness in her own voice. Or are you wondering if I'm telling the truth? Maybe I am a thief and a liar. Maybe everything I just told you is another fiction designed to win your sympathy. Warren reached across the table and covered her hand with his. His palm was calloused and warm, and the simple human contact made Olivia's eyes sting with tears she refused to shed. I believe you, he said. And even if parts of it weren't exactly true, I'd still believe the important part, that you're running from pain and trying to find somewhere safe to land. That's enough for me. Olivia stared at their joined hands and felt something crack open in her chest, some frozen place she thought would stay numb forever. Why are you being so kind to me? Because kindness is free, and the world's got enough cruelty in it already. He squeezed her hand gently, then released it. And because I like you, Olivia Hartwell. I like the way you hold your head up even when you're scared. I like the way you chose work over charity. I like the steel in your spine. You don't know me. Not yet, he agreed. But I'd like to, if you're willing. Olivia looked at him, really looked at him, and saw nothing but sincerity in his expression. It terrified her, that sincerity. She'd been lied to and betrayed by people who were supposed to love her. How could she trust a stranger, even one with kind eyes and gentle hands? I don't know if I can, she said honestly. Trust anyone, I mean. Not anymore. That's all right, Warren said. Trust takes time. I've got plenty of that. Over the following weeks, Warren became a regular presence in Olivia's life. He came to town every few days, always stopping by the hotel to eat lunch or supper, always finding a reason to linger and talk with her during her breaks. He told her about his ranch, about the cattle he raised and the land he loved, about growing up half Ute on his mother's side and learning to navigate between two worlds. He told her about his grandmother, who'd been born in a Ute camp and married a white trapper against her family's wishes, about the complications that came from being neither one thing nor another in a world that demanded clear categories. In return, Olivia found herself sharing pieces of her real history, the parts that didn't hurt so much to remember. She told him about her mother's garden in Pittsburgh before the family moved to Philadelphia, about learning to sew from her grandmother, about the books she'd loved as a child, and the dream she'd had of becoming a teacher before cholera stole her parents, and poverty stole her future. But she also found herself inventing stories, creating a past that felt safer than the real one. She told Warren her father had been a banker instead of a factory foreman, that they'd lived in a nice house instead of a cramped apartment, that her childhood had been comfortable and secure. The lies came easily, sliding into the gaps between truth like mortar between bricks, and Warren never questioned them. He listened to her fabrications with the same attentive interest he gave her truths, and gradually, Olivia realized he knew exactly what she was doing. One evening in late July, they were sitting on the porch of the hotel watching the sun set over the red cliffs when Olivia stumbled over her own fiction. She'd been telling him about a trip to New York her family had taken when she was 12, elaborating on details she'd gleaned from a magazine article, when she realized she'd placed them in a hotel that hadn't been built until 1878, 2 years after her supposed visit. She stopped mid-sentence, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment. "That's not true," she said quietly. "We never went to New York. We never went anywhere. I made it up." Warren was quiet for a moment, then said, "I know. You know, I've known for a while that some of what you tell me is true, and some of it's invented. I don't mind." Olivia turned to stare at him. "How can you not mind? I've been lying to you." "Have you?" Warren met her eyes. "Or have you been telling me stories about the life you wish you'd had? There's a difference, Olivia. A lie is meant to deceive. A story is meant to survive. I don't understand." Warren leaned back in his chair, his gaze drifting to the cliffs that glowed crimson in the dying light. "My grandmother used to tell me that every person carries two histories, the one that happened and the one they needed to happen. The real history teaches us what to fear. The invented history teaches us what to hope for. Both are true in their own way." "That sounds like permission to be dishonest," Olivia said, but her voice lacked conviction. "No, it sounds like permission to be human." Warren looked at her again, and his expression was so gentle it made her throat tight. "You've had a hard life, Olivia, harder than a young woman should have to endure. If inventing a softer past helps you imagine a better future, then tell whatever stories you need to tell. I'll listen to every one of them, and I won't judge you for a single word." Tears pricked Olivia's eyes. "What if I don't know what's true anymore? What if I've told so many stories that I've lost track of the real me?" "Then we'll find her together," Warren said simply, "however long it takes." That night, lying in her narrow bed, Olivia thought about Warren's words and about the way he'd given her permission to be broken, without demanding she explain all the pieces. It was the most extraordinary gift anyone had ever given her. That permission. And it made her want to be brave enough to stop hiding, to show him the real history instead of the invented one, no matter how much it hurt. The next time Warren came to town, Olivia asked if he'd take her riding. She'd never been on a horse in her life, a fact she'd carefully avoided mentioning during all their conversations, but suddenly she wanted to see his ranch, to understand the world that had shaped him. Warren agreed immediately and showed up the following Sunday afternoon with a gentle mare named Rosie and the patience of a saint. "She's steady," he assured Olivia as he helped her into the saddle. "Just relax and let her do the work. I'll be right beside you." The ride out to Warren's ranch took an hour, and by the time they arrived, Olivia's legs were aching and her hands were stiff from gripping the reins too tightly. But the ranch itself was worth the discomfort. It sat in a valley between red cliffs, with a creek running through the property and cottonwoods providing shade. The house was small but well built, with a wide porch and glass windows that caught the afternoon sun. Cattle grazed in the distance, and chickens scratched in a yard near the barn. "It's beautiful," Olivia said, and meant it. "It's home," Warren replied, swinging down from his horse with easy grace. He helped Olivia dismount, steadying her when her legs wobbled. "Come on, I'll show you around." He walked her through the property, pointing out the barn he'd built himself, the garden where he grew vegetables, the smokehouse where he cured meat for winter. He introduced her to his horses and his cattle, explaining the rhythms of ranch life with quiet pride. And then he brought her inside the house and showed her the life he'd made for himself in this harsh, beautiful country. The house was simple but comfortable, with handmade furniture and ute blankets on the walls. There were books on a shelf by the fireplace, and Olivia felt a thrill of recognition when she saw titles she'd loved as a child. Warren caught her looking and smiled. "I'm not just a cattleman," he said. "My grandmother taught me to read when I was young, and I've been making up for lost time ever since." "What's your favorite?" Olivia asked, moving closer to examine the collection. "Depends on my mood. Twain when I want to laugh, Whitman when I want to think, Cooper when I want adventure." He pulled a worn copy of Leaves of Grass from the shelf and handed it to her. "What about you? What do you read?" "I haven't had much chance lately," Olivia admitted, "but I used to love Shakespeare. The comedies especially. I like the idea that even when everything seemed lost, there could still be joy and resolution in the end." "Sounds like you're a romantic at heart." "I don't know what I am anymore," Olivia said honestly. She set the book back on the shelf and turned to face him. "Warren, why did you bring me here?" "Because I wanted you to see the life I'm building. Because I wanted you to know that I'm serious about getting to know you." He took a step closer, and Olivia could smell the sun and sage on his skin. "Because I'm falling for you, Olivia Hartwell, and I wanted you to see what I could offer if you decided you felt the same way." Olivia's breath caught. "You barely know me." "I know enough. I know you're strong and brave and resilient. I know you've survived things that would break most people. I know you're careful with trust because people have hurt you, but you still show up every day and do the work and try to build something better. That's enough for me. But the stories I told you, the lies about my past, tell me the real history," Warren interrupted gently. "Every hard, painful piece of it. Or don't if it hurts too much. Either way, I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." So Olivia told him. Sitting on Warren's porch with the desert wind in her hair and the setting sun painting the cliffs gold, she told him the unvarnished truth about her life. She told him about the cramped apartment in Philadelphia where she'd lived with her sister and brother-in-law, about the slow erosion of safety as her brother-in-law's attention became more predatory. She told him about the night he'd cornered her in the kitchen while her sister slept upstairs, about the way he'd grabbed her and told her she owed him for the roof over her head. She told him about fighting him off with a cast-iron skillet, about the bruises he'd left on her ribs and arms, about her sister's cold fury when she'd accused Olivia of seduction. She told him about leaving with nothing but $17 and a carpet bag, about the terror of traveling alone, about inventing the husband from Boston because it seemed safer than admitting she was alone and vulnerable. And finally, she told him about the shame that followed her like a shadow, the voice in her head that whispered she must have done something to invite the attention, must have somehow deserved the punishment. When she finished, her face was wet with tears. She hadn't realized she was crying, and her whole body was shaking. Warren gathered her into his arms and held her while she wept, his hand moving in slow circles on her back, his voice a low murmur of comfort in her ear. "None of it was your fault," he said. "Not one single moment of it. You hear me, Olivia? You didn't deserve any of that." "How can you be sure?" she asked, her voice muffled against his chest. "Because I know you. Because I see the way you work yourself to exhaustion to earn your keep, the way you flinch when men raise their voices, the way you hold yourself apart like you're afraid to take up space in the world. That's not the behavior of someone who courted trouble. That's the behavior of someone who's been taught to believe she doesn't deserve safety or kindness or love." Olivia pulled back to look at him. "And you think I deserve those things?" "I know you do." Warren cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs wiping away her tears. "I know you deserve every good thing this life has to offer, and if you'll let me, I'd like to spend the rest of my days proving it to you." Warren, I love you, he said, the words falling between them like stones into still water. I've loved you since that first day when you stood in front of the station with your chin up and your eyes full of fear and determination. I love your strength and your vulnerability, your truths and your invented histories. I love all of you, Olivia, and I want you to stay, not at the hotel, but here, with me, as my wife, if you'll have me. Olivia's heart felt too big for her chest. You want to marry me? I want to build a life with you. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep beside you every night. I want to show you every single day that you're safe and valued and loved. I want to give you a future that's better than your past. He searched her face. What do you say? What Olivia wanted to say was yes, immediately and without reservation, but fear held her tongue. What if I can't be what you need? What if I'm too broken? You're not broken, Warren said firmly. You're healing. There's a difference. What if the past catches up with us? What if my sister or her husband comes looking for me? Then we'll deal with it together. I'm not afraid of your past, Olivia, and I'm not afraid to fight for our future. Olivia looked into his eyes and saw nothing but certainty and love. It terrified her, that love. But it also called to something deep inside her, some part that had been dormant since the night she fled Philadelphia. I love you too, she whispered. I didn't want to, because loving people has only ever brought me pain, but I can't help it. You've been so kind, so patient, so willing to let me be exactly who I am, lies and all. How could I not love you? Warren's smile was like sunrise breaking over the cliffs. Is that a yes? Yes, Olivia said. And then she was laughing and crying at the same time as Warren lifted her off her feet and spun her around. Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I'll stay. Yes to all of it. They were married 3 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the church in Moab, with Mrs. Chin and Warren's grandmother as witnesses. Olivia wore a dress Mrs. Chin helped her sew from blue calico, and Warren wore his best shirt and a new hat. The minister was a kindly man who kept the service short and sweet, and when he pronounced them husband and wife, Warren kissed Olivia with such tenderness that she felt tears slip down her cheeks. Afterward, there was a small celebration at the hotel, with food and music and well wishes from the people of Moab who'd come to know and respect Olivia during her months working for Mrs. Chin. Warren's grandmother gave them a wedding blanket she'd woven herself, the patterned traditional ute, and achingly beautiful. Mrs. Chin gave them a set of dishes and strict instructions to visit often. You've become like a daughter to me, she told Olivia, pulling her into a rare embrace. I'm glad you found your way here. I'm glad you chose to stay. Thank you for giving me a chance, Olivia replied, hugging her back. I wouldn't have survived without your kindness. You would have, Mrs. Chin said firmly. You're stronger than you know, but I'm glad I could help. When the celebration ended, Warren took Olivia home to the ranch, lifting her over the threshold with exaggerated care that made her laugh. The house was filled with late afternoon light, and someone had left wildflowers on the table and fresh linens on the bed. Olivia recognized Warren's grandmother's touch and felt a wave of gratitude for the family she was gaining. That night, Warren was patient and gentle, taking his time to show Olivia that intimacy could be something beautiful instead of something to fear. He kissed away her tears when the memories threatened to overwhelm her, whispering promises against her skin until she believed them. And when they finally came together, it felt like a claiming of new territory, a declaration that the past was over and the future had begun. The first months of marriage were an adjustment for both of them. Olivia had to learn the rhythms of ranch life, how to care for chickens and tend a garden, how to cook on a wood stove and preserve food for winter. Warren had to learn to share his space and his solitude, to accommodate another person's needs and preferences. There were moments of friction, times when Olivia's fear made her withdraw, and Warren's frustration made him sharp. but there were more moments of joy. Mornings when they watched the sun rise over the cliffs while drinking coffee on the porch. Afternoons when Warren taught Olivia to ride properly, his hands steadying her until she found her balance. Evenings when they read aloud to each other by lamplight, sharing their favorite passages and debating the merits of different authors. Nights when they learned each other's bodies and hearts with increasing confidence and deepening love. In September, Warren's grandmother fell ill. Olivia insisted they bring her to the ranch so she could care for her, and for 3 weeks she devoted herself to nursing the older woman. She made broths and teas, changed linens, and read aloud when the grandmother was too weak to do it herself. Warren watched his wife tend to his grandmother with tireless compassion, and he fell even more deeply in love with her. "You're a good woman," his grandmother told Olivia one evening when Warren was out checking the cattle. "My grandson chose well." "I'm the one who got lucky," Olivia replied, adjusting the older woman's pillows. "He saved me." "No, child, you saved yourself. Warren just gave you a safe place to land." The grandmother reached out and took Olivia's hand. "I want to tell you something before I leave this world." "Don't talk like that," Olivia protested. "You're getting stronger every day." Humor, an old woman. The grandmother's grip was surprisingly strong. "I came from a people who understand that we all carry our histories differently. Some of us carry the truth like a burden, letting it weigh us down until we can barely move. Others carry it like medicine, using the pain to create healing. You've been carrying yours like a burden, Olivia. It's time to let it become medicine." "I don't understand." "The past hurt you? That's the truth. But it also brought you here to this place, to my grandson, to this life you're building. It gave you compassion and strength and the ability to recognize kindness when you find it. Those are gifts, child, hard-won and precious. Don't let the pain convince you they're not worth having." Olivia felt tears slip down her cheeks. How do I do that? How do I stop seeing my past as something shameful and start seeing it as something that shaped me? You keep living forward. You keep choosing love over fear. You keep building a future that honors the strength it took to survive. The grandmother smiled. "And you stop telling invented histories. Your real one is powerful enough." The grandmother recovered slowly, and by October, she was well enough to return to her house in town. But her words stayed with Olivia, echoing in her mind during quiet moments. She began to think differently about her past, not as something to escape or disguise, but as something that had forged her into the woman Warren loved. It was a subtle shift, but it changed everything. In November, Olivia discovered she was pregnant. She told Warren over breakfast on a cold morning when frost painted the windows silver, and his joy was immediate and unrestrained. He whooped and lifted her into the air, then set her down carefully as if she were made of glass. "We're going to have a baby," he said wonderingly. "You're sure?" "As sure as I can be," Olivia replied, laughing at his expression. "Mrs. Chen confirmed it yesterday when I went to town. She says I'm about 2 months along, which means the baby should come in June." Warren pulled her close, his hand spreading protectively over her still flat stomach. "I'm going to be a father." "You're going to be a wonderful father," Olivia corrected. "The kind who's patient and kind and teaches his children to see the good in people." "Our children," Warren said. "That sounds amazing." The pregnancy was difficult at first, with morning sickness that lasted well into the afternoon and exhaustion that left Olivia sleeping through half the day. Warren took over more of the household work, insisting she rest and let him handle things. His grandmother visited often, bringing teas and remedies that helped with the nausea, sharing stories about Warren's birth and early childhood that made Olivia feel connected to the family she was joining. By January, Olivia was feeling better, and she threw herself into preparing for the baby. She sewed tiny clothes and blankets, turning scraps of fabric into something beautiful. Warren built a cradle from cottonwood, carving it with patterns his grandmother taught him. They argued amiably about names, with Warren favoring traditional Ute names, and Olivia wanting something that would work in both worlds. "What about William?" Warren suggested one evening. It was my grandfather's name, and it's common enough that no one will question it. And if it's a girl, Rose, after my grandmother's English name, or Nasha, which means owl in my mother's language. Rose Garrett, Olivia said, testing it. I like that. And William Garrett sounds strong and capable. Like his mother, Warren said, pulling her close. Winter passed slowly, with deep snows that kept them close to the house for weeks at a time. Olivia learned to love the quiet intimacy of those long winter days, the way she and Warren existed in a world of their own making. They talked for hours about their childhoods, their dreams, their fears. Warren told her stories about growing up between cultures, about the prejudice he'd faced from both white settlers and Ute traditionalists who saw him as neither one thing nor another. Olivia shared more about her parents, the good memories she'd kept locked away because they hurt too much to examine. I wish they could have met you, she told Warren one snowy afternoon. My mother would have loved you. My father would have respected the life you've built. I wish I could have known them, Warren replied. Anyone who raised a daughter like you must have been special. By the time spring arrived, Olivia's stomach was round and her back ached constantly, but she'd never felt more content. She spent her days preparing for the baby and tending to the garden Warren had helped her plant. She visited Mrs. Chen in town once a week, and the older woman always sent her home with practical advice and small gifts for the baby. In early June, when the desert was blazing hot and the cottonwoods provided precious shade, Olivia went into labor. Warren rode to town to fetch Mrs. Chen and his grandmother, and for the next 12 hours, Olivia labored, while the women murmured encouragement and Warren paced outside like a caged animal. The baby was born just after dawn, a boy with a healthy set of lungs and his father's dark hair. Olivia held him against her chest and wept with relief and joy while Warren sat beside her on the bed, his arm around her shoulders, his eyes fixed on his son with wonder. William, Olivia whispered. Our William. He's perfect, Warren said, his voice rough with emotion. You're both perfect. Mrs. Chen and Warren's grandmother cleaned up and made sure Olivia was comfortable, then left the new family alone to bond. Warren lay beside Olivia on the bed, his finger caught in William's tiny fist, and they marveled at the miracle they'd created. I never thought I'd have this, Olivia said quietly. A family, a home, a future I actually wanted. There were so many times I almost gave up, when it seemed like the pain would never end. But then I found you. We found each other, Warren corrected. And I'm grateful every day that you had the courage to keep going, to get on that stagecoach and come west. I'm grateful you trusted me enough to stay. I love you, Olivia said, the words coming easily now. I love you and our son and this life we're building. It's not the history I invented, but it's so much better than anything I could have imagined. It's only the beginning, Warren promised. We've got years ahead of us, Olivia. Years to watch William grow, to build our ranch, to love each other. Years to create a history that belongs to us. Olivia smiled, exhausted and happy. That sounds perfect. The first year of William's life passed in a blur of sleepless nights and small milestones. Olivia learned to function on minimal sleep, to nurse a baby while cooking supper, to find joy in the smallest accomplishments. Warren proved to be a devoted father, taking William out to the barn in a sling so Olivia could rest, singing Ute lullabies that his mother had sung to him, teaching his son about the land they lived on, even though the boy was too young to understand. When William was 8 months old, a letter arrived from Philadelphia. Olivia's hands shook as she opened it, terrified it would bring news of her sister or brother-in-law seeking revenge. Instead, it was from a neighbor who'd lived in the apartment below theirs, a woman who'd been kind to Olivia during those difficult years. The letter was brief but devastating. Olivia's sister had died of pneumonia that winter, and her husband had drunk himself to death 3 months later. They'd left no children, no family, nothing but debts, and an apartment full of worthless furniture. The neighbor thought Olivia should know, in case she wanted to come back and claim anything. Olivia read the letter twice, then set it down with trembling hands. She felt a complicated mix of emotions: grief for the sister she loved before everything went wrong, relief that they could never hurt her again, guilt for feeling that relief. Warren found her sitting at the kitchen table with tears streaming down her face, and William crying in his cradle. "What happened?" Warren asked, scooping up William and settling him against his shoulder before sitting down beside Olivia. She handed him the letter and watched his expression shift as he read it. When he finished, he set it aside and reached for her hand. "How do you feel?" he asked. "I don't know," Olivia admitted. "Sad, relieved, angry that they're gone before I could ever get an apology or closure. Grateful that I don't have to be afraid anymore. All of those feelings are valid. I keep thinking about my sister, about who she was before her husband poisoned her against me. She wasn't always cruel. There was a time when she protected me, when she was the only family I had left after our parents died. I lost her long before she actually died, and I never got to mourn that loss properly." Warren shifted William to one arm and wrapped the other around Olivia. "Mourn her now," he said gently. "Mourn the sister you lost and the relationship that could have been. You're safe enough now to feel all of it." So Olivia did. She let herself grieve for the family she'd lost, for the years of fear and pain, for all the ways her life could have been different. Warren held her while she cried, and when William fussed, they both tended to him together, their son a living reminder that good things could grow from painful soil. Over the following weeks, Olivia found herself thinking about her grandmother's words about turning burden into medicine. The letter had forced her to confront the past one final time, but instead of destroying her, it had freed her. She didn't have to carry the fear anymore, didn't have to invent histories to make herself feel safe. The past was over, truly over, and the future was hers to shape. In the spring of 1884, when William was almost 2 years old, Olivia discovered she was pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was easier, and she found herself enjoying it more. She loved watching Warren interact with William, teaching him to recognize animal tracks and plant names, reading to him every night before bed. She loved imagining a second child joining their family, a sibling for William to grow up with. The baby, a girl they named Rose, after Warren's grandmother, was born in November during the first snowfall of the season. She came quickly and with less drama than her brother, and from the first moment, it was clear she had her father's calm temperament and her mother's determination. Warren's grandmother, now in her 80s, held her namesake with tears in her eyes. "She's beautiful," she said. "A perfect balance of both her parents." "Just like her brother," Olivia replied, watching William peer curiously at his new sister. The years that followed were full and rich. William grew into a thoughtful, curious boy who loved books and horses in equal measure. Rose was more adventurous, always climbing things she shouldn't and exploring places that made her mother's heart race. Warren expanded the ranch, buying more cattle and building a larger barn. Olivia started teaching reading and writing to children in town, holding classes twice a week in a room above the general store. In 1887, Warren's grandmother passed away peacefully in her sleep, and they buried her on a hillside overlooking the valley with both Christian and Ute ceremonies. Olivia mourned her deeply, grateful for the wisdom and acceptance the older woman had shown her. At the funeral, standing between her husband and children, Olivia realized she'd built exactly what she needed: a family that loved her unconditionally, a community that respected her, a history she no longer needed to hide from or invent around. That evening, after the children were asleep, Warren found Olivia sitting on the porch watching the stars emerge. "You're thinking about her," he said, settling beside her. "I'm thinking about everything," Olivia replied. "About how different my life could have been if I hadn't gotten on that stagecoach. About how lucky I am to have found you, to have built this life." "I'm the lucky one," Warren said, taking her hand. "You took a chance on me, on this place, on a future you couldn't see. That took courage. Or desperation. Olivia said with a small smile. Maybe both. But you stayed because of love, and you built a life because of strength. Those things matter more than how you started. Olivia leaned her head on his shoulder. Your grandmother told me once that I needed to stop carrying my past like a burden and start carrying it like medicine. I didn't understand what she meant at the time. And now? Now I understand that everything I survived made me capable of building this. The pain taught me to recognize kindness. The fear taught me to value safety. The loneliness taught me to cherish love. I wouldn't choose to go through it again, but I also wouldn't trade the lessons it taught me. Warren kissed the top of her head. She'd be proud of you. I'm proud of you. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars wheel overhead. Then Olivia said, Do you remember that first day when I told you about the husband from Boston? I remember. You saw right through me, but you helped me anyway. Why? Because you needed help and I had help to give. It was that simple. Nothing about you is simple, Warren Garrett, Olivia said, turning to look at him. You're the most extraordinary man I've ever known, and I fall more in love with you every single day. The feeling is entirely mutual, Warren replied, pulling her close. You came west with nothing but pain and hope, and you built a life that matters. You're raising children who know they're loved. You're teaching other people's children to read. You're my partner in every way that counts. How could I not love you more each day? In 1889, they had another son, James, who inherited his mother's green eyes and his father's quiet strength. In 1891, another daughter arrived, Emma, who was born during a thunderstorm and seemed to carry that wild energy throughout her childhood. The house that had seemed spacious when Olivia first saw it now felt comfortably full, bursting with children and laughter and the controlled chaos of family life. Olivia continued teaching, becoming known throughout the territory as someone who believed every child deserved an education regardless of their family's means or background. Warren served on the town council, working to ensure fair treatment for everyone in the growing community. Together, they built a reputation as people of integrity and compassion, the kind of couple others looked to as an example. In the summer of 1895, a woman arrived in Moab looking for work. She was young, maybe 20, with haunted eyes and a carpet bag that looked suspiciously like the one Olivia had carried 13 years earlier. Olivia saw her standing outside the hotel, clearly working up the courage to go inside, and felt a wave of recognition so strong it stopped her in her tracks. Can I help you? Olivia asked, approaching gently. The young woman turned, and Olivia saw fear and determination warring in her expression. I'm looking for work. Someone told me the hotel might need help. They might, Olivia agreed. But first, are you hungry? Have you eaten today? The woman hesitated, then shook her head. Come with me, Olivia said, gesturing toward the cafe down the street. Let's get some food in you, and then we'll talk about work and other things. Over lunch, the young woman's story spilled out in fits and starts. She'd run from a bad situation in Colorado, had invented a past that seemed safer than the real one, was terrified of being found, and equally terrified of starving in a strange town. Olivia listened with her whole heart, seeing herself in every word, understanding every fear. I can't promise everything will be easy, Olivia said when the woman finished, but I can promise that you're safe here and that there are people who will help you build a new life if you're willing to do the work. Why would you help me? The woman asked, suspicious of kindness. Because someone helped me once, Olivia replied, and because I understand what it's like to need a fresh start. She took the woman to meet Mrs. Chen, who hired her on the spot with the same brisk efficiency she'd shown Olivia years earlier. Then she invited the woman to supper at the ranch, wanting her to see that healing was possible, that good lives could grow from painful beginnings. That evening, sitting around the table with Warren and their children, watching this new young woman slowly begin to relax, Olivia felt a profound sense of completion. Her own history, both the real and the invented parts, had led her to this moment. She'd survived pain and built joy. She'd learned to trust and love. She'd created a family and a community that valued her. And now she could offer the same gifts she'd been given: safety, patience, and the permission to heal at her own pace. After supper, when the children were helping clear the table and the young woman was tentatively talking with Warren about ranch life, Mrs. Chin pulled Olivia aside. "You did good today," she said quietly. Seeing her pain and responding with kindness instead of judgment. "You taught me that," Olivia replied. "The day you hired me without asking too many questions. The day you told me to choose forward instead of backward. And Warren taught you to be honest about your pain instead of hiding from it." Olivia looked across the room at her husband, who was listening to the young woman with the same patient attention he'd shown Olivia all those years ago. Their children were playing nearby, secure in the knowledge that they were loved and safe. The house was full of warmth and light and possibility. "He taught me that love doesn't require perfection," Olivia said. "That I could be broken and beloved at the same time. That my history, real or invented, didn't determine my worth." "You've built something beautiful," Mrs. Chen said. "Not just this family, but the life you're living. Your children will grow up knowing they're valued. That young woman will heal because you showed her it's possible. That matters, Olivia. That's legacy." That night, after everyone had left and the children were asleep, Olivia stood on the porch watching the moon rise over the cliffs. Warren came out to join her, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders against the cooling air. "You were wonderful with her today," he said. "Patient and kind, and exactly what she needed." "I remember being her," Olivia replied. "Standing outside that hotel, terrified to ask for help, but more terrified of the alternative. If you hadn't pointed me toward Mrs. Chin, if Mrs. Chin hadn't given me a chance, if you hadn't let me tell whatever stories I needed to tell until I was ready to face the truth, I don't know what would have happened to me." "You would have survived," Warren said with certainty. "You're stronger than you think." "Maybe, but I wouldn't have thrived. That's what you gave me, Warren. Not just survival, but the space to heal and grow and become the woman I was meant to be." Warren pulled her close, and they stood together watching the stars emerge. After a while, he said, "Do you ever regret the invented histories, the stories you told about your past?" Olivia considered the question carefully. "No," she said finally. "They served their purpose. They kept me safe until I was strong enough to face the truth, and they taught me something important about resilience and survival." "What's that?" "That sometimes we need to imagine ourselves into a better future. The stories I told weren't really about the past at all. They were about hope, about believing that life could be different from what I'd known. In a way, they were prophecies. I invented a history where I was valued and loved and safe, and then I lived my way into making it true." Warren was quiet for a moment, then said, "That's beautiful." "It's honest," Olivia replied. "For the first time in my life, I can look at my past, all of it, the real and the invented parts, and see how it shaped me into someone capable of love and joy." That's what your grandmother meant about medicine. The pain doesn't disappear, but it becomes something useful, something that helps instead of harms. They stood together in comfortable silence, two people who'd found each other against all odds and built a life that honored both their struggles and their triumphs. The house behind them was full of sleeping children who would grow up secure in their parents' love. The land around them was harsh and beautiful, demanding and rewarding in equal measure, and the future stretched ahead, full of possibility and promise. "I love you," Olivia said, the words a benediction in the desert night. "I love you too," Warren replied. "Yesterday, today, tomorrow. For all the histories you've lived and all the futures we'll create together." Inside, William cried out in his sleep, and they heard Rose padding across the floor to comfort her brother. A moment later, James joined them and then Emma, and the sound of their children's voices drifted through the open window, a chorus of love and family. "We should go in," Warren said. Make sure they're all right. They're fine, Olivia replied, smiling. They're comforting each other the way siblings do, the way family does, the way we taught them to. Yes, Olivia agreed. The way we taught them to. They stayed on the porch a while longer, reluctant to end the perfect moment. Finally, when the stars were bright overhead and the air had cooled to comfortable, they went inside together. Warren checked on the children while Olivia banked the fire and locked the doors. Then they climbed into bed, fitting together with the ease of long practice, and talked quietly about the day, the week, the life they were living. Do you think she'll be all right? Warren asked. The young woman you helped today? I think she'll struggle for a while, Olivia said honestly. Healing isn't quick or easy, but yes, eventually, I think she'll be all right. She has what I had, a safe place to land, and people willing to let her find her own way forward. Because of you. Because of us, Olivia corrected. This community we've built, this life we're modeling. It matters, Warren. It gives other people permission to heal and hope. Warren kissed her forehead. I'm proud of you. Proud of us. Proud of what we've created here. Me too, Olivia whispered, already drifting towards sleep. Me too. The years continued to pass, marked by small joys and occasional sorrows. William grew into a thoughtful young man who wanted to study law, and they sent him to Salt Lake City for education, with mixed feelings of pride and grief at his absence. Rose became a teacher like her mother, opening a school on the ranch for children whose families lived too far from town for daily travel. James took to ranching like he was born to it, working alongside his father with quiet competence. Emma, wild and creative, talked about becoming an artist and painted everything she could see. In 1902, when Olivia was 42 years old, Warren 55, and their youngest was 11, they celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary with a party that brought together everyone they'd known and loved over the years. Mrs. Chen, now in her 70s but still sharp as a tack, made the cake. The young woman Olivia had helped years earlier, now married with children of her own, brought flowers from her garden. Friends and neighbors filled the house and spilled out onto the porch and yard, all of them gathered to celebrate a love that had endured and deepened over 2 decades. As the sun set and lanterns were lit against the gathering darkness, Warren pulled Olivia aside and led her to a quiet spot under the cottonwoods. I have something for you, he said, reaching into his pocket. Warren, we agreed no gifts. This isn't a gift exactly, more of an acknowledgement. He pulled out a small leather journal and handed it to her. Open it. Olivia opened the journal and found the pages filled with Warren's neat handwriting. Dates and events, stories and memories. 20 years of their life together documented in careful detail. The day they met, their wedding, the births of their children. Small moments and large milestones, all recorded with love and attention. You wrote down our history, she said, tears filling her eyes. Our real history, Warren confirmed. Every bit of it, from the day you stepped off that stagecoach with your invented stories to right now. I wanted you to have a record of the life we built together, the truth of us. Olivia flipped through the pages, seeing their life reflected back at her. The struggles and triumphs, the fears overcome and love deepened, the family grown and community strengthened. It was all there, honest and complete. This is the most beautiful gift anyone's ever given me, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Thank you. Thank you, Warren replied, for having the courage to stay, for choosing to build a life with me, for teaching me that love isn't about perfection. It's about showing up every day and doing the work of caring for each other. These 20 years have been the best of my life, Olivia. However many more we get, they won't be enough. Olivia set the journal aside and wrapped her arms around her husband. I love you so much, she said, more than I thought it was possible to love anyone. You saved me, Warren, not from my circumstances, but from myself. You taught me that I was worth saving. We saved each other, Warren said, holding her close, and we built something worth saving too. this family, this life, this love. It's our real history, Olivia, the one that matters. They stood together under the cottonwoods, holding each other as stars emerged overhead and the sounds of celebration drifted from the house. Two people who'd found each other against all odds, who'd built a life from pain and hope, who'd chosen love over fear every single day for 20 years. Inside, their children were laughing with friends, secure in the knowledge that they were loved and valued. Around them, a community they'd helped build was celebrating not just a marriage, but a testament to what was possible when people chose compassion over judgment, when they let others heal at their own pace, when they understood that everyone carries their histories differently. Olivia thought about the frightened young woman who'd stepped off a stagecoach 20 years earlier, clutching a carpetbag and a handful of invented stories. She thought about the cowboy who'd seen through her lies, but offered help anyway, who'd given her permission to be broken and beloved at the same time. She thought about all the ways they'd healed and grown together, building something beautiful from broken pieces. "Come on," Warren said finally, taking her hand. "We should get back to our guests." "In a minute," Olivia replied. "I want to remember this moment right here. You and me under the stars, 20 years behind us and however many more ahead. This is the history I want to carry forward." "Then let's carry it together," Warren said, and they walked hand in hand back to the house, back to their children and community, back to the life they'd built from courage and kindness and love. The party continued late into the night, full of music and dancing and storytelling. People shared memories of Warren and Olivia over the years, talking about the ways they'd helped others, the example they'd set, the difference they'd made. And through it all, Olivia and Warren stayed close, their hands finding each other across crowded rooms, their eyes meeting in shared understanding. When the last guest had finally left and the children were asleep and the house was quiet again, they climbed into bed exhausted and happy. Warren pulled Olivia close, and she rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. 20 years, she said softly. It feels like yesterday and forever ago at the same time. Here's to 20 more, Warren replied, and then 20 more after that. That would make us very old, Olivia said with a laugh. Then we'll be very old together. I can't think of anything better. Olivia closed her eyes, feeling the weight of contentment settle over her like a blanket. She'd come to Moab with nothing but pain and hope, with invented histories and desperate lies. And she'd found a man who let her tell whatever story she chose until she was ready to face the truth, who'd loved her through the healing, who'd built a life with her that honored both the pain and the joy, who'd given her everything she'd needed: safety, patience, time, and above all, love. She fell asleep wrapped in Warren's arms, dreaming of the future still ahead of them, of grandchildren and golden anniversaries, and growing old together on the land they loved. Dreams that were no longer inventions, but promises, possibilities grounded in the solid foundation of 20 years of love and work and choosing each other every single day. And in the morning, when sun streamed through the windows and children's voices filled the house and Warren kissed her awake with gentle affection, Olivia knew with absolute certainty that she'd finally found what she'd been searching for all along, a history that was hers, honestly and completely, worth remembering and worth building on, a love that asked nothing but gave everything, a future bright with possibility and rooted in truth. She'd invented a history because her real one hurt. The cowboy had let her tell whatever story she chose, and together they'd created something better than either could have imagined, a life worth living, a love worth fighting for, and a legacy that would endure long after they were gone.